But
it's made of like a pasta noodle, like a straw at some restaurant.
Yeah.
God, I was just in Europe. I love that pasta noodle straw. That's great.
They
How
really
we
have
got
that?
rid of, huh?
They really have that?
You haven't had that before, Taylor? They have those here sometimes.
No.
There's
if you
some
go to an
places that have
upscale
them here.
restaurant,
It's a fucking dry piece of pasta.
Instead
it's a
of
great straw.
A paper
It's
straw?
way better than paper. Way better than paper.
My experience is paper straws work, but they're one, I don't know. I guess I have a sensitivity to putting paper in my mouth because it gives me like the tingles.
I feel you.
And two, it doesn't stop working, but it loses its structural integrity, and I hate that.
Yeah.
Pasta straws are prone to cracking, and plastic's not, so they're not as good, but it's a step up from paper.
But they don't turn to mush.
Yeah,
and you can save them and make dinner later.
Everywhere around here does plastic straws. Like they're just better. Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of functioning as a straw, if that's what you're looking for from a straw, then they are at the top of the heap.
Dude, that is my number one. When I'm drinking something through a straw, I'm looking for suction. I'm looking for pleasantness. I'm not looking to hustle through my Diet Pepsi.
I want to know. I'm saving the coral reefs over here, Taylor, and I don't want any microplastics in my.
How they successfully fooled people into thinking that straws are at all a thing that is like really impactful on the world.
They found that one turtle.
Hey, everyone, it's actually not these giant multinational corporations destroying rivers and oceans. It's you not wanting soggy paper in your cup. That's what's causing the problem.
There was literally an article about like 3,000 word article in Slate or Vox or one of those about like this week about how we got fucking bamboozled into blaming straws for all the ills of the world. Yeah. And actually, I mean, it's probably better. Like, okay, it's one of many contributing, how we focused on just the straw was like, it's a ridiculously small amount. And yeah, it's one thing. And I think it's probably better that restaurants don't like default to straws. Like, hey, do you want a straw? Yes. If you don't ask for it, you don't get one. Like, okay, I can drink out of a fucking cup, like whatever. But yeah, we got pretty hoodwinked.
I never know what to believe, right? Like Zach just posted a stat. Plastic straws only comprise 2.5% of roughly 8 million tons of plastic. Okay.
I think it was smaller than that.
0.025%.
0.025%.
Oh, I converted the quarter 0.025 to, you know what I did? I made the decimal a percentage, but it was already percentage.
0.02%. Yeah,
the challenge with that is this. Like, I could find one sunken car bumper and be like, this is parallel to 175,000 straws by weight.
Right.
But it's not.
But a car bumper is not going in a turtle's nose, is it?
Right. A car bumper, I guess, doesn't dissolve into microplastics that just like filled the entire drinking water system or whatever. Where straws are turning into these little itty bits of problem in a way that a solid. So I just don't know that weight or mass is a proper way to measure the straw's impact.
But I mean,
what
the straw
happens here
isn't the
is
only
a politician,
type of plastic out there.
Not even a politician, a fucking staffer leaned over and said, "Ma'am, look at what we're all doing right now. Simple plastic drinking straw. That's where we should strike first. We need a tent pole fucking topic for our environmental program, and we've all got one in our hands right now. What about Starbucks? Do not go after Starbucks. Straws, people. Straws.
Yes.
That's what.
Oh, you remember Starbucks? What Starbucks did when they had a big PR campaign around the same time as the straw, where they're like, we're taking the straw and the plastic cup we currently have, and we're combining to simplify into this sippy cup, which has more plastic than both combined. And it's like, they just wanted to like save on their, like on a production line or be able to like purchase that shit easier and not have to have two items that they don't need instead of one, which eventually they did go back to plastic straws.
Here's where
remember when they banned plastic bags and made everyone use paper bags. And then the grocery store said, well, this is too expensive, so you have to pay for the paper bags. And then they unbanned plastic bags, but kept the bag charge.
This happened
in California. You couldn't get a plastic bag. They all said the paper bags were so expensive that you have to pay for them. Okay, fine. I'll eat the fucking 10 cents, whatever. And then they unbanned plastic bags, but they kept the bag charge. I mean, you talk about a lobbyist victory. You know,
California is something special. So on the East Coast,
we're dumb as
when you
fucking
go to a
rocks,
restaurant and you need napkins, you go to a little napkin dispenser and you grab like a 1/4 inch. And if you're like a wasteful asshole, you grab like a 1/2 inch of napkins or something. It's probably more than you need.
Yeah.
You go to California. I went there. I grabbed my little 1/4 inch of napkins, and my Californian coworkers couldn't believe the audacity in me to grab like 8 napkins that I didn't probably need, that I was going to throw away clean napkins. And it was like, shit, that's just the Jersey way. I don't know.
If somebody
I'm going to
said
throw
something
away
like
their
that to
portion
me,
too.
I would tell them stories about burning piles of tires in my childhood. like, do you think you can make a fucking difference? If you could labor your whole fucking life like Hercules, it wouldn't fucking be a drop in the bucket. You'd be a 2% of 1%, and you wouldn't even be a millionth percent of that, you fucker, cutting your straws out. I'll burn tires tonight on your behalf. Fucking napkins. Get out of here. That's so stupid. Anything environmental that they try to shove down your throat is horse shit. It's fucking horse shit. There's 300 million of us. There's another 7 billion fucking assholes out there, and all of them in Southeast Asia are the dirtiest, trashiest people you can imagine.
Dude, China and India behave like the ocean
Indonesia
wronged them. Like that's like China dumps trash like the ocean is an eon old enemy. Like they hate the sea and they hate everything that lives in it. And they're telling us we can't.
Seems like a lot of our policies, at least in California, are like they begin with good intention, you know, but then they just then they take a left, they take a turn somewhere, and they turn into this thing that we have to do, you know, on an individual level, or you know, something we can do differently, but that like the giant corporations don't have to change their behavior.
No, they change too. That's not fair. They're definitely being regulated, and they're cleaning up the power plants and shit like that. I think that sometimes people make the mistake of being like, you know what? Regular people don't burn any energy at all. It's really these companies that are using all the energy. Meanwhile, you're comparing me, who's running an air conditioner, to someone who's molting dirt into concrete, or however you make concrete. I don't know, turning sand into glass, things that take a ton of energy. Like Woody doesn't use any energy. It's this steel mill over there that's irresponsible. And it's like, nah, I can still be irresponsible. I just don't have as
well. Yeah, I mean, we can too, but it's presented in my experience, it's presented particularly in California as an individual thing. And sometimes it is, like, for instance, like, you know, when we had like a drought last year and they said, look, you know, we need you to water your lawns 1 day a week instead of 3. Okay. And actually a lot of people did, myself included, reduced our water, and I fucking put buckets in my shower and watered my plants with extra shower water and that kind of stuff. And that did get us through. But it seems to be like whatever we can do to not affect capitalism too much, you know, definitely don't stop the profits from rolling. Let's all make sure, let's make all the people buy expensive electric cars rather than put in an infrastructure that gets some people out of cars who don't want to be in their cars.
On that note, I've noticed like, they're all about buy a fuel efficient car. They're all about buy an electric car. Here's some incentives to do so. But work from home, they're pushing your ass back into the office constantly. They're like, I don't, you got to come to work and deal with your coworkers.
Dude, it's not working. Like the whole going back to work, like in offices, like, I have one of my buddies is in California and he's a commercial real estate guy in California. And he will like straight up tell me he'll be like, it's fucking brutal out here, man. Nobody wants anywhere to rent. Like I'm trying to
gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger.
Yeah, I will gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger.
Dude, they should convert some of those offices
doing
to
real estate
apartments, man. Yeah, commercial real estate in California is pretty fucked. And remember like at the end of 2020, how they were like, oh, by the way, like the air is like the cleanest it's been in 40 years, you know, and working from home was like actually like the biggest positive change that we could do for our air and our water and all this
people
and all this
loved
stuff.
it. Loved it. Everyone's like, this is a so much better lifestyle. An hour a day commuting to work in traffic is just sucking the soul out of me.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, working from home is bringing joy. And people were buying their own desks. They were upgrading their homes. They were happily investing in their work from home infrastructure because they thought it was worth it.
And it was.
And there
like,
are, I
most
mean, there
people-
are granted like some people and some jobs that need cat butt that need to be done in person. And there's some people that thrive in an in-person environment and like, cool, like let them do that. Like make that an option. But there's other people that can be just as productive and work from home. And those people are reducing their, I mean, even just, just as an example, I drive a lot of cars. So my vehicular impact is probably more than the average person, but and I have a car collection, although those vehicles are not typically generating emissions because they sit a lot of time. But both my wife and I used to have regular cars that we would use to drive around. And starting in 2021, we ditched one of them entirely. And so now the two of us can share a car because she works from home. And so we are literally using half the amount of car on an everyday basis because one of us, doesn't have to commute to anywhere, which it saves everybody. And it's electric. So we're going green.
Yes.
Taylor, I'm
Where's
curious.
the energy come from?
Asking you as a
in
younger
California,
guy,
most of it's clean. In California, our energy is pretty good. But you buy an EV.
But I was going to say, we don't have enough.
Not so much.
Like we all switch to electric cars tomorrow. Not only are there not enough electric cars for that, but like there's not enough power for that.
Yeah, no, that is definitely true. We could overwhelm
where do people think the
power grid in a
electricity
lot of
comes from?
places.
From the sky.
Well,
there's a fusion reactor in the sky. You haven't noticed it?
Oh, yes. Certainly not
It's
oil or
huge.
natural gases or no.
it's
Not
it depends on the state, and some states are good and other states are not so good, and some countries are good and other countries are not so good. And so yeah, definitely
More
a
nuclear
big
power.
problem.
That's what we need.
it is.
I
what we
think
need.
I like some nukes.
100%.
Pro nuke.
I think
I love
even the
nuclear
blue
power.
team is coming around to the idea that nuclear power is part of the solution.
Sure.
How
in
could it
Calif-
not be? It seems so
in-
efficient.
Yeah.
In California, it's the most efficient by far. If you look at like the cost per the net cost per like unit watt, whatever they use for that, it's
And
always
emission
the
wise,
cheapest
it's
by
far and away
far.
the best.
It's like this fraction of a penny with per unit of energy. In
I
California,
met a
it's
guy
10%.
who was
What?
researching
Is nuclear cheaper?
Nuclear
Yes.
is the cheapest
Nuclear is
source of
cheap.
energy, and it has been since they invented it.
But there's not a
Yeah,
huge
it's
boondoggle of money to be made with like wind shit. Like the like wind,
yeah.
like the amount of money pissed away in that, like it's absurd. Hey, let's make a whole
you'd be
field ugly,
surprised.
inefficient, and kill all the birds.
So in Georgia,
Oh, I
there is
love that
the-
fucking argument. Republicans never gave a shit about any animal ever in the history of the goddamn planet. And then you suggest a clean energy source, and they're like, what about the birdies?
Not a
I'm
clean-
really concerned about birdies.
Wait,
My
they
major
wanted to hunt
concern,
them.
my environmental, like, I don't know, essence.
Dude, there
is
are
wrapped up in
huge
birds.
there are huge environmental things that the right needs to pay attention to. And the idea that you're gonna have a bunch of fucking windmills out there doing anything but them breaking years before they achieve the amount of energy like intake that they took to produce, like it's just a laugh. Like they don't spin all the time, they're not regular, like they
I
are
don't
the most
understand
absurd,
that.
ridiculous way to get energy when we already have nuclear. We already have nuclear.
Taylor, do you know why like you've got a big field of fucking wind generators and like there's 20 of them and 7 are spinning like fucking so fast and then some are just not moving at all? Like why is that?
Because it's just an
Are they all
inefficient
broken?
way. It's just an inefficient way to get power compared. Like
Well, like is
It's-
there just
it's so
not wind,
old-timey.
like 10 feet here? Like I
It's
don't
just
I'm
They're
such a-
slowing
it's
the
not like
wind
it
down.
seemed like
They're
it-
Imagine-
slowing the wind down.
it's
so
so
there's not enough
anachronistic
power
to go back to
the
wind.
other one.
Like everything else is better than wind. Solar's better than wind. Gas is better than wind. Nuclear's better than wind.
Do you
Everything's
remember when
Taylor,
someone like
you need
like
a
3
Dutch
weeks ago
character who
proposed
loves
a
wind.
sailboat? Someone like 3 weeks ago, someone was like, "Here's what we're gonna do with freight." Sails. They reinvented the
Saw
sailboat.
that.
See, that's what they're doing with the windmill. And they're like, guys, we have this great, we've
wind?
tapped a Dutchman from 800 years ago on how to get power. We
Wind
actually
is
came up
5
with
times
the
cheaper
ultimate
than
way.
nuclear. I knew we had our facts wrong because I had seen this 1,000 times. Nuclear is one of the most expensive.
Just for the that's the upstart. It's expensive to build a nuclear reactor, but once you're going with it, it is easy to maintain. It's super cheap. It doesn't cause emissions problems. It doesn't take up a huge amount of room. Like nuclear just seems like the smart option.
It's part of it because it works when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine, and those are real things.
Mhm.
So I'm not denying that nuclear is part of the solution. I'm just denying that it's the cheap one. Solar is always called the cheapest one. Wind is cheap.
I've read solar and wind have a huge amount of upkeep. Or I got solar is more what I read on that. Is
so what the problem actually is, it's when we build that solar and wind infrastructure, we're creating an enormous amount of pollution to do so. All of the heavy metals we got to get out of the ground to build all of those wind generating like magneto fucking spinny
this
things.
is so funny.
Or
None
whatever.
of us have any idea.
I do. They just built 3 brand new nuclear power plants in Georgia.
Don't let that stop you, Matt. Just fire off.
They just built 3 nuclear power plants in Georgia. I think they're the only new ones in a really, really long time in the U.S. I think they were $17 billion over budget though, and like maybe 7 years.
I know a guy who's researching micro nukes. So basically, the shit they would put on a submarine, a small nuclear reactor.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically the same of what would go on an aircraft carrier or a submarine, and they can use that to power a small town, or up to 20 or 30,000 people.
Yeah.
And by having small ones instead of like giant Homer Simpson ones, the Chernobyl ones, you could spread them out, spread out the sort of risk and all that kind of stuff. And
I've heard them say those aircraft carriers use a piece of fuel the size of a golf ball over the course of a year or two or something.
Yeah, it's a tiny amount. Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, this is so long ago, but they showed us a nuclear pellet and it was about the size of maybe 4 pencil erasers. And they're like, this will do a city for a year. It's like kind of in line with what you're saying.
It's crazy the amount of energy that comes from that. I've also seen some really cool shit that's being done with hydrogen for stuff that has fixed route. Like actually, I saw a working prototype of a hydrogen aircraft, which was awesome. It had an interchangeable fuel cell cartridge, and they just like pull the whole thing out and put another one in, and it's like full again in 10 minutes, and it can fly 400 miles. It was a turboprop that ran on hydrogen and produced 0 emissions. The only emission was water. I think that was pretty cool.
The thing it always comes around to me, and they're always afraid to say it, it's like we've got this new kind of energy, but it's all backed by fossil fuels that to build it, to make it work, to keep the infrastructure that powers it, and like there's no way you could switch to like that thing, right? Like, oh yeah, this will fuel everything tomorrow. No, we'll all die. No, it will run out of that, and we need to burn some oil to get this piece of that and that piece of that, and everything's backed by oil. And
this funky looking Airbus concept that Zach put up looks really rad, but the one that I saw was actually a very regular looking turboprop plane, and they took out the last 3 rows of seats, and that's where the fuel cell thing was loaded into. It just had a few fewer seats at the back, which is kind of what this one looks like.
I just noticed that it's
like that one. That's the one I saw.
In that last rendering, it has the one engine at the bottom. It took me a while to notice. That's great.
I noticed that too. One engine is not as safe as multiple.
I think that might be a lazy Photoshop.
Yeah, they're just having fun. They should put E on there. Why not? It's Photoshop. They're free. In California, it's 10 cents to return a bottle. And there's this family decided, well, maybe they watched Seinfeld. I don't know. They decided they were going to run the Seinfeld bottle return scam.
California to Michigan?
No, California gives you 10 cents. So you only need to bring them over the border into California to get 10 cents. They're already there. These are Michigan folk. Well, it doesn't matter. These are Californians importing bottles. I think from Arizona. $7 million is what they had cleared when the authorities got a hold of them.
Good for them.
Yeah.
There's 8 members of the family up on a slew of charges. They're all going to prison.
What was being smart? Recycling?
What was illegal that they
for
did?
importing trash, illegally importing
Illegally importing
They're
trash.
recycling. You're not allowed to bring bottles across state lines to get your dime.
Yeah, that's
No.
absurd. Why couldn't you do that?
Apparently.
Isn't the whole goal to get people to recycle?
So the idea is that the dime you're getting isn't them paying you for trash. It's them refunding you for 10 cents that you gave them when you bought the bottle.
Right. Yeah. The fine print.
So they've created a whole business of importing.
I didn't know
The
that.
numbers are so big that they don't matter in your head anymore. It's like 128 tons or 128,000 tons. Who cares? It was a lot of glass.
Right. So if it's a 5-cent refund in Arizona and a 10-cent, it's like tax fraud, basically.
Yeah. On a massive scale. And not only that, they had $1 million worth in the pipeline, like getting ready to like move along. So they're in lots of trouble. But 7 million apparently is what they cleared already.
Wow. And you think they're just taking them to the one at a time depositories, or
No.
they're doing it by
They had a
weight
business.
somewhere?
I think they had started like a recycling businlike where they were moving.
Wow. If you opened the recycling facility, so if you also owned the recycling facility, now it's like mega.
I don't know how else you process hundreds of tons of glass. You'd have to be the boss, because if you show up to the regular place with like dump trucks backed up around the block and tell them to start weighing them,
The homeless people are like, this is fucking bullshit.
Come on, have a little ambition. Like, you guys could do this
crazy.
too.
I don't know if we even have a bottle return here, or if it is in Georgia. If it is, it's so little that even as children, we just threw them away. We'd return the Coke bottles, but to me, that just seemed like being nice. I've
never returned bottles. I don't even know where I would go to do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think I've ever lived in a place that does that.
There's like recycling centers. Like sometimes they're like in the parking lots of grocery stores, shit like that. And it's like a reverse vending machine where you put it in the thing and it goes cha-ching.
Like the Goodwill thing.
And,
I don't know if made it out to Missouri
I saw some
yet.
piece of shit putting trash in the Goodwill thing.
Did you really? What an asshole!
On the internet. It's like that's
what a prick. Some kid just wants a Christmas present and it's going to be covered in beans.